Today is June 28th, 2014, and this is episode 122 of Let's Talk Bitcoin. The following program is not an endorsement for any service, product, act, or anything. In the words of Arthur S. Falls, bury your money in the ground. It's the only safe thing to do. Welcome to Let's Talk Bitcoin, a twice-weekly show about the ideas, people, and projects building the digital economy and the future of money. Today, we're all about artist coins. First, I caught up with Simon, the South African-based band leader of the decentralized altcoin mine-in cypherpunks. Then, Stephanie sat down with Niceplum, another artist, to talk about his profit-sharing asset built on the counterparty system onto the Bitcoin blockchain. But first, we launched LTB Coin yesterday, and I'm ready to tell you all about it. But first, let me introduce myself. My name is Adam B. Levine. I'm the catalyst behind the LTB Coin project and editor-in-chief of the LTB network. You can visit ltbcoin.letstalkbitcoin.com to see many of these details laid out in text, with links to the full documents that explain and define the nooks and crannies we're not going to have time to talk about today. LTB Coin is a brand new kind of thing. It's a crypto reward system where people who help LTB to be useful are rewarded for their efforts, and it's built on Bitcoin. Why is LTB Coin valuable? Effective July 1st, 2014, LetsTalkBitcoin.com, the Let's Talk Bitcoin show, and the LTB network will only sell sponsorship space on web properties or airtime on the shows for LTB Coin, and to the highest bidder, as denominated in LTB Coin, at our regular online auction events. The final user of the sponsorship doesn't actually have to be the one that buys the sponsorship from us. They can be purchased by anyone in our audience or anywhere else and are delivered to the highest LTB Coin bidder as a sponsor token. That sponsor token can then be sold or traded for several weeks before eventually being redeemed for a specific type of access, whatever it was that it promised. Of course, we'll be publishing our full sponsor guidelines before the first auction takes place, so it'll be really clear if your type of endeavor can qualify to be on the network, but broadly speaking, the restrictions are just against general adult content, gambling, and sorts of things like that. So what does LTB Coin mean to you? Well, if you're a user, you should log in. Registered users of Let's Talk Bitcoin earn LTB Coin for reading articles and listening to shows. You can earn more by interacting with the community, tipping posts, or commenting on articles, even via our iPhone app. Or by discussing, of course, the latest episode of Mad Money Machine or Bitcoins and Gravy in the forum. If you're on the creative side of things, if you make a show or write an article or ever wanted to, either by yourself or as part of an ad hoc group formed for that task on the forums, you'll earn LTB Coin not only when we publish your work to our audience, but again a month later when the performance of your work is compared against all of the other work published during that week, and is then rewarded again. If you want to become a core part of the early LTB network, contact us about starting a niche or viewpoint-specific blog on the LTB Coin platform and become a curator, partnering with writers and creators to showcase your favorite works and earn your share of the LTB Coin allocation and time on the Let's Talk Bitcoin front page. When I started Let's Talk Bitcoin, we were a basic blog, and then we moved to WordPress, and for about 9 months we were a blog with an odd front page. About 4 months ago, Let's Talk Bitcoin 3.0 got underway, and the website you see today is the result. What we've built, although you can't see it yet, is a community platform that has cryptocurrency baked into its bones. And while we're starting slow, in time there will be thousands of individually curated blogs feeding their best content to dozens or hundreds of unique front pages. And even though we think this is a pretty compelling offer to anyone who wants to get involved, it's going to be open source. So anyone who wants to roll their own content universe can follow our model, use our best tools, and we're working out the details on that now. We aim to make cryptocurrency a normal, exceptionally useful part of everyday life, and invite you along for the ride. So what do you need to do? First, visit counterwallet.co and generate a free multi-wallet that holds Bitcoins, LTB coins, and anything else built on Bitcoin using the Counterparty protocol. With one click, you'll generate a secure 12-word passphrase. You'll want to keep that safe as it's actually your private key. Once you've created your password, log into your wallet, and you'll see 3 brand new Bitcoin addresses that you control. Copy one of those addresses, then head over to letstalkbitcoin.com. Log into your account at the upper right-hand corner of the page, and you're almost there. Inside your account, you'll see a few options, one of which is My Profile. Click on that, and at the bottom of the page, you'll see a place to put your LTB Coin compatible address. Again, that's a counter wallet address. Paste your newly created Bitcoin address, save the changes, and you're done. All you have to do then is just participate in our ecosystem, and every week you'll receive the LTB Coin that you are owed for your participation. And the forums are now working over at letstalkbitcoin.com. Head on over there if you have any questions or want to leave any comment. So what happens now? Today, the first 51 million LTB coins, representing 10% of the eventual 510 million that will exist at the end of 5 years, were created as the initial supply, and we're in the process of distributing these now. 40% of them are going to content creators that have worked for Let's Talk Bitcoin over the last year and not been paid for their work outside of the tips that you've sent. 18% goes to forum participators. These are people who sign up on the forums and have more than 5 non-spam posts before this distribution is sent out, probably at the end of next week. Even if you think that you've already put in your LTB coin address because you were signed up on the earlier forum, when we moved the forums, those didn't come with us, so you do need to follow this process too. 12% is going to key thinkers. This comprises the initial launch team of LTB and really was an opt-in thing where anybody who wanted to participate simply had to write something, a good forum post. So again, if you think that you qualify for being a key thinker, we do have a pool set aside for people who I haven't already identified. So please post in the forum, share your contribution, let us understand how you helped, and you can be part of this key thinker demographic too. 15% is being set aside for partner funds. We don't really know what we're going to use these for yet. The assumption is that other networks will want to be involved with us, and it would be good to have an amount of tokens set aside that we can be flexible with in terms of deal making and increasing value for the LTB coin ecosystem. 10% of these initial funds are being given to the LTB platform, essentially for compensation for paying for all of this development over the last year. We've now built our third platform out of pocket. Funds from this 10% will also go to support some of the support staff, such as James, who runs the YouTube channel with absolutely zero guidance for me and does an awesome job, and Michael Sullivan, who helped build the platform before. And finally, we've got 5% set aside essentially to vest the people who come in later and join the Let's Talk Bitcoin organization to help with the platform. We are going to need a CEO. It probably won't be me. We are going to need a CFO. It probably won't be my father, who has been fulfilling that role for the last year quite valiantly. And so again, we wanted to set aside some funds initially for this purpose without diluting the weekly in quite the same way. Once this initial distribution is done, we think that LTB coin is going to be in the hands of at least 500 people, and I'd love it if it was more like 1,000. As we sit right now, there are about 200 people who have LTB coin. Starting next week, we'll also be doing weekly disbursements. We're tallying user participation now, and next week we'll see the first proof of participation round, where 1,700,000 LTB coin will be divided between all the people who participated during that week. Next week, we'll also see the first weekly proof of value distribution, where all the content published on the front page of Let's Talk Bitcoin will split 2.25 million LTB coins based on how many pieces of content of theirs were published on the front page during that week. This is a weighted split based on how many published pieces there are, although there are diminishing returns for posting a whole bunch of content during the same week. Each subsequent piece you post is worth a little bit less than the one before. So we're going to do this every week. And again, you can see the complete distribution chart by visiting ltbcoin.letstalkbitcoin.com. Now, we can't know what's going to be successful and what won't, so there's actually another layer of value here. The weekly proof of value distributions will begin in about 5 weeks. The same content from this first week is essentially going to be looked at again after it's been out in the wild for a month. At that point, another 2.25 million LTB coin are distributed to content created during that first week based on how well it performed compared to every other piece of content published that week over its first month. The more successful the piece is compared to others, the larger its share of proof of value. I know all this is a little complicated, but I think that this is actually really important. Ultimately, what we're doing here is we're changing the model so that instead of you paying us, it's us paying you, and then you paying us. I don't think anybody's ever done this before. Maybe there's a good reason, but I think that that good reason probably was because it wasn't possible before. You can't do this with Bitcoin. You can't take Bitcoin and give people Bitcoin for free because, simply put, Bitcoin isn't free. But something like LTB coin, that actually is. And so because of that, we can be very, very generous with it, and we actually expect you to be generous with it too. So in closing, I'd like to borrow some of my favorite words from Douglas Adams. Let us think the unthinkable. Let us do the undoable. Let us prepare to grapple with the ineffable itself and see if we may not F it after all. Thanks for listening. Today on Let's Talk Bitcoin, we're joined by Simon, collaborative band leader over at the Cypherfunks. Simon, thanks for taking the time with us.
Thanks, Adam.
Tell me a little bit about the Cypherfunks, because we've been starting to see these types of music concepts mesh together with cryptocurrency, and you have a really interesting project. So can you give us a little overview?
The Cypherfunks is the sort of short, like one-liner tag would be an attempt to crowdfund a global band through a cryptocurrency. The idea behind is basically saying, looking at different ways how musicians can organize in the 21st century, and then asking the question of how do you make it so that the incentives are aligned, that people can more willingly contribute to such a concept, which in other words means how do you make it so that there's additional incentives to contribute towards something that's perhaps a bit different in how we looked at music or music creation over the past few years. Basically at the start of the 21st century and saying the internet is completely new and has new forms of organization. What would it look like to make music with people from all across the world?
Okay, and so the cypherpunks was born. Just from a technical standpoint, this is a full altcoin, right? This is not built on top of Bitcoin. You actually have your own mined chain here, right?
Yeah, that's right. There were a lot of different options I considered starting this thing, but the important part was you had this idea of a band anyone can join, as in you don't have to ask permission to make music under this collaboration effort. That something had to represent that as well. So I spent like a month or so trying to figure out ways in which you could perhaps use color coins on the Bitcoin blockchain. Mm-hmm. But the problem was if you use color coins that the issuance was still centralized. You had to have someone issue the colored coins to the people of the collective or the musicians. That sort of didn't fit well with the idea that you wanted something that has decentralized ownership.
Okay. This sounds like you made this decision because you didn't want to have the responsibility centered on you, right?
That would have been fine, but if you would wanted to approach a project like that, then you would have just used colored coins or other form of digital asset issuance, perhaps using something like open transactions or something like that. Okay. But the ethos of the project is it's a band anyone can join. So the ownership of it felt like it needed to be decentralized as well. Sure. The only sort of issuance model that currently exists for something like this is to have a full-blown alternative cryptocurrency. It actually started a bit beforehand, and I can explain further.
Please. I'd love to hear kind of your thought process going through this and arriving at this point.
What happened was the concept of a decentralized band I had for about 3 years, but it was basically just that bringing people together to make music from all across the world, and people have equal ownership in the idea. And that sort of was just nascent in the back of my mind. It was just something that sounded interesting to try. And then when Dogecoin launched in December last year, it sort of started turning gears in my head. It made me look at cryptocurrencies differently. It wasn't just about that a cryptocurrency could be have only its value could only be in its technical features. Its value could be in the fact that it represents something. So Dogecoin represented this funny meme and this community, and that was something people liked, and there was no technical improvements in the cryptocurrency part of it. It was only a vector of the sort of branding aspect of the coin. If enough people believe that that's what that tokens represents, then that's all that's needed. So if you look at cryptocurrencies, say going to the next few years down the line, at some point it might happen, might not happen, but it might happen that the technical features of cryptocurrencies become optimized, right? So you will have the most efficient form of a cryptocurrency. Perhaps some altcoin does it, perhaps Bitcoin perfects it, but the technical features over time seemed like it's only a vector for increasing the network effect of that coin until the technical feature becomes copied by other altcoins. So it brings up the question, well, when all the technical sort of solutions are found or optimized, what will the next form look like? And then it becomes a factor of what does the coin represent? Some coins represent political stance saying we want more anonymity and so forth. Other coins are more fun and different, like Dogecoin. And if you have a cryptocurrency that represents a community, then I think we're going to start seeing more of that going to the future once more people start realizing what is a cryptocurrency and what it can do.
Can you walk me through how the various participants in this system participate? Do you have designated miners? Are they different from people who are creating content? Because I understand what you're saying is you went with an altcoin because you wanted to make it as decentralized as possible and wanted to make it so that anybody can join. So I'm trying to figure out, what does joining the cypherpunks look like? Do I just produce a song, or do I need to mine and produce a song, or do I just need to mine?
Yeah. That was one of the most interesting stuff to experience when it launched. Was you have these sort of actually two distinct communities, and trying to get them together and so far it's actually a more difficult problem than I realized, because you have the cryptocurrency community that looks at this and thinks, well, this is a bit odd. And then you have musicians going, well, what's a cryptocurrency? And then trying to match the two together. But if you want to take part, ideally with such a different kind of cryptocurrency, you sort of want to match the technical part up with something that sort of relates to what you're trying to do, sort of like the AppCoin model. But so far, cypherpunks only, the cryptocurrency part only represents ownership, or sort of you're participating in it through the cryptocurrency as well. So when participants join, you can join various parts of the system. So if you're a cryptocurrency enthusiast, you can join as a miner. You can help build infrastructure. There's people that contributed by putting up block explorers and so forth. Or you can come in from the other side and say, I'm a musician. I like the idea of making music with people from the world. And I like the idea of a band that I can join without asking anyone's permission. The sort of very creative, semi like internet chaotic idea of just mashing music together and see what comes up. So there's different parts to it. And the idea is that the people that bring music to the table, you want to, if there's songs that you like with the people produce, then you tip them in that cryptocurrency and say, this is awesome, let's make more of that. And the question is a question you can ask is, well, why you could just do this with Bitcoin, right? Why would you need a separate cryptocurrency? The part with coming back to that original question was, if you look at a Bitcoin itself, Bitcoin as a network represents a lot of things, right? It represents a lot of different people, a lot of different aspects. And as it grows larger, it starts representing more and more things in the world, different communities, different networks, and so forth. And it doesn't necessarily represent a collection of musicians working together. So it's looking at it a bit differently and saying the cryptocurrency is the network that is monetized. So that's how different people can come together to participate in the system.
Interesting. So the mining is just to create and maintain the token. You're not doing distribution of the music with it. You're not doing anything like that. So literally the purpose is the mining, and then the mechanism by which the musicians are paid or vested in the network or in the band, I guess you would call it, is they're tipped by the miners. Is that the only feedback mechanism that's going to the artists?
There have been several other ideas that we've bashed about. So that's currently the only way, and it's that way if people believe that tokens represent the actual band part of the system. But we have thought of different ways, maybe incorporating it or tying it more together, so there's different feedback loops in the system, because the like hashes in the system, like transactions or block hashes, are just random strings and numbers. You could use that to feed it through like a sampler or a MIDI input or so forth, to actually create samples for people to use.
Proof of music.
Yes. So you could, yes, in a way. I listened to a discussion yesterday with Rob Myers. He created FaceCoin, which is quite interesting. It looks for patterns of faces in images as the proof of work. And I've been thinking of trying to figure out a way to use sort of a new proof of system related to music, but obviously it's incredibly difficult to figure this out. But I suspect there might be something like that, but we'll see as time goes on.
It sounds like you have launched this project, like it's out there in the wild, you're generating music. How much participation have you had from each side? What do you think the roadmap is for this project? Do you consider it a success so far?
That's an interesting question. When I start something like this, part of it's obviously to test the hypothesis, and that the hypothesis is, does the cryptocurrency's worth depend on its network effect? And if the network effect is tied to, if we produce songs and a lot of songs becomes popular, will it result in people wanting to use the cryptocurrency part of it? And that's, the jury is still out if that will be a success. But I said to myself, what's the basic things I want out of this project? And most of it has been fulfilled, which is I want at least one other person to make a song for the project. And that was successful. I think we've had between 6 and 10 contributors and 2 or 3 regular contributors. It's mashed up. I remix stuff and they remix my stuff, and it's crisscross the whole time. And the other part was, creatively as a musician, I wanted to make something that I'm proud of, and it's a collaboration with someone that I would not have met otherwise, and that has happened. I'm very proud of some of the music I've made, and that's awesome. And then the final, very distant success goal is to make this cryptocurrency successful in a way that it eventually supports musicians. The ultimate end goal is sort of the awesome tick mark would be that the cryptocurrencies become so successful that for 1 year, there's actually someone that could now take time off and only make music. And that would be an awesome end result.
Well, I think that you're on the right path towards that. Simon, so if somebody wants to get in touch with you or wants to help out with the project, learn more about it, what are the appropriate URLs or email addresses for that?
The easiest is probably just to search the cypherpunks, and the name is similar to cypherpunk, which is just CYPHERFUNK, and you'll find the links there, and it's easy to find from there. We have a SoundCloud page, which is a group of people that have contributed, and a subreddit as well, and on Bitcoin Talk as well, there's a thread where people can find more information and hopefully contribute some music to the project.
Hi, this is Stephanie here from Let's Talk Bitcoin. Today, I've got an artist here with me, Nice Plum. Welcome to the show, Nice Plum.
Hello. It's an honor to be on your show.
Thank you so much for joining us. Tell me about what you do, about your work.
I started making out music just as a hobby for myself, and I never really thought about releasing it to the public. However, recently I've noticed that people do want new albums. I was trying to figure out a way how I can make that happen.
What kind of music do you make?
My music, I've tried to give it a genre, and it's a bit difficult, but I would say it's down-tempo electronica with some guitar elements as well as glitch. It has sort of a flavor from the Demoscene community, which is people who make music using old computers and stuff like Super Nintendo. I like the style, but not necessarily the implementation of that. So I went with making songs that focus on melody and have this style.
Defying genres there. Just as a matter of curiosity, how do you actually make the music? Is it strictly electronic? Are you recording guitar played live, or is it all on the computer?
I do a variety of methods to create my music. Mostly I use a tracker, which some old school users of computers will be familiar with, possibly, which is a text-based music composition program. Usually these programs like Fruity Loops and Logic, they have a piano roll. You put dots where you want the music to be played on the piano. Or there's like sheet music, like the standard Mozart type sheet music. And then there's a third type, which is text-based, which is it just shows the letters that correspond to the notes, like C4, C in the fourth octave. I just find this is really, really fast for making songs.
Wow, that's really interesting. You said that you decided to find an innovative way to release your music to the public, and this ties in with cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin, obviously.
I got interested in cryptocurrencies because of the corrupt banking system in my home country of Slovakia, where it's actually possible for the bank to just reappropriate your account into someone else's name if they so desire.
Wow. Seriously?
It's actually also possible for government executives to open up a file drawer and to change the name on a deed of a house, and then they can throw you out of your own house.
Wow. I can understand why cryptocurrencies would appeal to you then.
That's exactly why I got into Bitcoin and Gridcoin and cryptocurrencies in general, to just not be subject to this control, even though it's not likely that it will happen to any given individual, but to to whom it does happen, they usually look back, as hindsight is 2020, and they think, I probably should have used crypto.
Right. Okay. So that's how you got interested in it. But tell me more about how your music ties in with Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies.
What I've done is I've decided to issue profit-sharing assets, which means that if people buy a certain amount of Nice Plum, they will receive a percentage of all sales from albums or all gigs played from that point onwards.
Profit-sharing assets, is that almost analogous to a share in your music, like a stock almost? Not a stock, obviously, but sort of like that?
I would say yes, sort of like that, but I would avoid the terminology share because it carries legal connotations that the people involved have control over the entity. So that would imply that these people will decide how Nice Plum is marketed, how my music is supposed to sound, and such. And it will also make me subject to many like legal restrictions and regulations, which is not really the case because it's not a share. It is a profit sharing asset or token.
Yeah, I'm with you. I understand how, governments like to kind of funnel things that aren't quite stocks or aren't quite phone companies, for instance, into little boxes that then they can regulate and they can define. But that's not really what you are. It reminds me of this article I read recently from one of the early founders of Skype, who said that at the beginning of the days of Skype, they had all kinds of governments telling them, oh, you're a phone company, but they were not a phone company. They had some similarities, obviously. They allowed people to talk to one another, but they were not a phone company. And so they said, look, we're not a phone company. We're doing something different. As a result, did not end up falling under those regulations. And he actually said people in the Bitcoin community really should be doing the same thing, not pretending to be a bank, not begging for regulation, not saying, oh, yes, we're money transmitters. Go ahead and regulate us, not thinking regulation is inevitable, but saying, look, we're something different because they are. That was a little bit of a tangent. I understand how what you're doing is different than stocks, and you're calling it profit-sharing assets. Now, that makes sense when you think about it. Profit-sharing assets. So when people would buy Nice Plum, what is it exact? A token? Is it an altcoin? Is it on Counterparty? What is it?
Actually, it's on Bitcoin itself, on the Bitcoin blockchain itself, using, as you said, Counterparty, which is a peer-to-peer financial network built on top of the Bitcoin blockchain. It's often described as an altcoin incorrectly, although I would say it is simply a toolkit for expanding the functionality of Bitcoin, because it's not a separate coin. It doesn't have its own mining algorithm. It doesn't have anything that would give it the definition of an altcoin. It is simply a toolkit that allows users to create assets, to place bets, to make contracts for difference and other financial instruments using Bitcoin itself.
Okay, yeah, so Counterparty is providing the interface for that. And you said placing bets. It's kind of interesting because if someone buys Nice Plum now, they're kind of betting that in the future you're going to become very famous and you'll profit a lot from your work, and they can share some of those profits. Is that right?
That's entirely correct. Although I'm not certain that everybody has exactly this in mind. There's people who buy, let's say, 1 or 2 shares, which is just a few cents, and they're just doing this because they would like to see more of the music and not because of profit interest. But of course, there's people who invest a larger amount who are then expecting, yes, this will pay off in a few years.
If somebody buys Nice Plum, do they get anything now other than the expectation of perhaps future rewards? Do they get access to your music or something like that now?
I've actually said that anyone who buys Nice Plum assets and can provide me a signed message from the shareholder address that they're using on Counterparty, then I will send them all my previous albums free of charge.
So that's a lot of work for you. I mean, that would be a manual process. Do you think you could automate that?
Absolutely. Actually, there's a new functionality that's built on top of Counterparty called Vend, which is a digital vending machine, which is you send something and it sends you an asset back. So not only will it be easier to buy Nice Plum, because you will send some Bitcoin to an address and you will automatically receive Nice Plum. with that, you can probably enclose some information for them to log in at a different page. I think the best solution would be something I've seen on blockchain, I believe, or a different website where you can log in using your Bitcoin address by signing it with your key. And I think if users can authenticate themselves that way, then it will absolutely be possible for them to automatically download NicePlum.
What is your philosophy, or how do you feel about the concept of intellectual property as a musician?
I think it's important for one reason, that if musicians they're not in the public eye at the echelons of the A-list, then they're not really making so much money. So if their intellectual property is then not respected, then it creates quite a problem for those entering the field, or for those who have a niche that is not the mainstream top 100 pop song. So I think for those that are earning billions with their music, they can afford to have their songs downloaded or whatever. But for the different artists, it's actually quite difficult.
I'm seeing kind of a catch-22 here, because if somebody were to buy NicePlum, then perhaps they have an incentive because they want to share in your future profits. They may have an incentive to share your music because they want more people to know about you and to get introduced to your music. But then on the other hand, if they're sharing your music for free to get people introduced, are those people ever going to buy from you? And then how are you going to, what's your business model, sort of?
Well, the business model is that what you're saying is not only inevitable, but something I have actually thought about when creating the asset, because people who own the profit sharing asset have an incentive to promote me, because the more they promote my music, the more they will make, essentially. And I think sharing songs for free they're gonna do that anyway. And studies have shown that if music albums are released on torrent sites for free, then they often generate more sales than if they're only available in the store.
Yeah, I've seen those studies too. All right, cool. So you wouldn't necessarily be opposed then to people torrenting your music, because they do have that incentive to promote you and to kind of invest in your success.
Not really. Yeah, they can freely distribute it as they wish, as long as they support NicePlum in some remote way. I think if they tell their friends, that's enough grounds to let them send it freely, because as long as they're doing something to help the asset itself, then it's pretty much up to the users what they do.
Yeah, I can think of some instances in the past where I've heard music for free and then later I've gone to see the band in concert. Do you actually play live shows at all? And are you thinking that people might hear your music and then they would want to see you in concert, and then you could make money off the ticket sales or t-shirt sales at the concert or something like that? Oh,
absolutely. I mean, for the time being, I've been very busy with different work and mostly working on albums as well as some occasional busking. I will definitely now look more towards the live scene, because that's where the income will come for NicePlum holders. That would be the main resource.
So they also have incentive to promote your live events, not just your music.
I would say even more so than the music itself.
Do you think that'll be a powerful enough incentive for people to want to spend their time promoting you? Just the simple idea of holding some of these profit-sharing assets, NicePlum?
Depends on what you mean by promoting. I'm not expecting them to put together a portfolio and spend 40 hours in a week promoting NicePlum. But if they just mention it while they're drinking a beers with somebody, put it up on their iPhone or Android or whatever, hopefully an open source device, but they show their friends, and that's really enough.
CryptoKit is the world's first Chrome browser Bitcoin wallet. It's the easiest, fastest Bitcoin wallet payment system. With a simple one-click install, it takes just seconds to get your wallet set up. And because CryptoKit finds the address and payment for you, there's no more fussing around or tab switching. CryptoKit is more than just a wallet. It comes with a preloaded PGP encrypted social network, news feeds from Reddit and Google, and up-to-date charts from exchanges. Finally, CryptoKit Directory allows you to make two-click payments with any of the BitPay merchants. Once you install CryptoKit, you won't need anything else. For more information or to download CryptoKit, visit CryptoKit.com.
Hi, Stephanie here. Would you like to turn your book into an enthralling audiobook? Need a persuasive commercial to promote your company? How about a narrator for your explainer video? Here's where I can help. I'm a freelance voiceover artist, and since 2009, I've lent my voice to dozens of audio projects. To hear some examples of my work, check out my website, smvoice.info. If you like what you hear, I'd love to be the voice of your next project. Get in touch at smvoice.info. Thinking about in the past when I've held altcoins or held bitcoins or whatever, and I really think you do have an incentive. Like, once you're invested in something, you want to tell other people about it, you know, and perhaps invested is the wrong word to use, but once you are holding something or you have something, you want to tell other people about it. There's kind of this psychological drive to share it and to promote it, really, that exists with any altcoin or with Bitcoin, but also with something like NicePlum, like a profit-sharing asset.
Yeah, I believe I can sum that phenomenon up in one word, which is Dogcoin.
Right. I'm wondering, like, can people spend NicePlum on anything that you are offering? So, like, if they want to go to your concert, can they pay NicePlum to you for that? Or can they buy your album with it?
That was never the intention, and I will have to think about that. I realize that's what Tatiana coin is supposed to be, but I don't think NicePlum will have this for a while.
It wasn't your intention starting out?
No, the intention was basically, I wanted to support my musical career, obviously, but I didn't want to just go out there and be like, please give me money or please buy my album. I didn't want to ask for donations without offering anything in return. So I'm thinking, if you buy the share, you will have a profit sharing asset from NicePlum. Not only that, but you will also receive the previous albums, which I may actually release for free once enough shares are sold.
It seems like kind of almost a way to pay yourself in reverse. And what I mean by that is, like, over a musical career, a musician might start out really poor and eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich on the tour bus every day, trying to promote themselves. And then maybe at the end they hit it big. But what you're doing is basically trying to support yourself I don't know if it's at the beginning of your career, but before you've reached the point where you're playing in front of millions of people and so forth. How much are you actually trying to raise? Like, NicePlum will there be? What do you expect to get out of the initial sale?
I'm selling 10,000 NicePlum, which is out of the total of 100,000, so it's 10%. Mm-hmm. And I doubt I will be selling more, because I think this way there are people who have their chance to buy shares, but it's not too much to impede my further workflow. The current rate is 10 NicePlum for one XCP counterparty.
And how much is one XCP worth in terms of Bitcoin or maybe fiat currency right now?
In terms of Bitcoin, it's around 0.004, I believe.
Okay.
In terms of dollars, it's anywhere between $2 and $4 each.
Okay. So there are two kind of exchange rates at play here. If, for instance, if somebody wanted to take some Bitcoin that they had and they wanted to get NicePlum, they would have to sort of exchange it into the counterparty system for XCP and then exchange that for NicePlum, right?
Actually, no. Counterparty, as opposed to the other solutions on the market, Counterparty supports full Bitcoin trading. Bitcoin is a first-class currency within Counterparty, and pretty much all features are possible using Bitcoin. So it is completely possible to buy NicePlum using Bitcoins directly, and when Vend, the application built on top of Counterparty, is released, which I believe is very soon, then it will be possible to send Bitcoins to an address and Nice Plum will automatically be sent back like a vending machine. You throw some coins in, throw some Bitcoins in, and the Nice Plum drops out.
Okay, going back to your model or your plan, you're going to have 90% of the Nice Plum that you hold yourself. So you basically have 90% of your own profit sharing assets. So that's pretty much the vast majority, right? And the other 10% will go to anybody who gets it, right?
I think that's fairly reasonable. It's a tenth of all profits from here on out. To sell more, that would be difficult then for me, because then even if I do make a profit, it would be all distributed, and then it would be difficult to continue what I was doing before. So I think selling 10% at what is relatively a low price is just a good way to get the message out. To be honest, the core concept of Nice Plum is I want to promote the counterparty system, because I really think it's a brilliant idea, and it is doing for the world of finance what Bitcoin is doing for fiat currency. It is allowing people to interact on a free market, to issue assets as they please, with no censorship, no central authority, and no cat to eat the private keys.
Yeah, amen to that. I just one last question here as we wrap up. How does the profit sharing actually work? So like in the future, let's say that you hold 90% of the Nice Plum and the remaining 10% is in the hands of other people. We'll call them supporters, backers, something like that. When you make a profit from a concert or from an album sale, let's say that you receive Bitcoins or perhaps fiat money in exchange for the concert that you just played or the album that you just sold. You then use that to buy up more Nice Plum from that, out of that 10% pool that's distributed from other people? Or does the value of Nice Plum just rise with your sort of personal reputation and capital?
I certainly hope that the value of Nice Plum will rise, as you say. However, in the counterparty system, which is, I'm not sure if it's even reasonable to call it something else because it's on top of Bitcoin. But anyway, in counterparty, to automatically pay dividends, which means if the album sales are done in Bitcoin and I receive Bitcoin, then it will be transparently visible on the blockchain that this money was transferred to the counterparty wallet. Using a simple click of a button, I can distribute it to all shareholders, well, not shareholders, all asset holders, supporters, whatever we may call them, simultaneously. So it's you click the Nice Plum asset, you click pay dividends, and it automatically transfers the percentage amounts to each investor.
Okay, so they're monitoring the blockchain for certain addresses that are going to receive payments for your items, and then that gets distributed as a dividend to the holders. That's interesting. So what if, not that you would do this, but what if there was an artist that was doing a similar model, but basically didn't keep their word about the whole profit sharing thing? Like what if they sold something or got some payment to a stealthy Bitcoin address that wasn't being monitored by the blockchain and didn't want to share the profits? What is the incentive to not do that?
Well, I can't speak for anyone else, but my incentive is one, counterparty itself as a peer-to-peer financial market is pretty much as important, if not more important, as Bitcoin for the future of the free market and freedom in general. So I think the incentive for me is Nice Plum was the first music profit sharing asset that was released on Counterparty, and this is eternalized forever. People will be able to check that in hundreds of years. And if I'm the first one on this network and I mess with the people who are supporting me, then that's reputation suicide, not only for myself, but for Counterparty and the system, and it can be used as an argument against Bitcoin, and I'm sure someone will try to do something like this, but the point is it's really up to the users to research what they're investing into. As with normal stocks, This happens on the stock market regularly. People buy stocks and the company's like, sorry, we don't actually exist. We're just a cardboard cutout, and it's actually incorporated in Belize overseas, and your money's gone. Bye. But the point for me to make Nice Plum is I didn't really want to issue profit sharing assets, because to me it seemed I could just keep all of my profits. Why would I do that? But I think it has a nice dual effect. It promotes Nice Plum to some degree, but moreover it promotes Counterparty as a system for anyone to crowdfund anything without censorship. It's like Kickstarter without the rules. You can crowdfund whatever you want. You can put it on there. It costs fractions of a Bitcoin, 50 cents maybe at the moment, $1. This is what I'm trying to raise awareness for, that you can bet without a bookie, that you can speculate without a broker, and that you can issue your own assets for whatever you want. I mean, there's assets for cloud mining. There are actually Bitcoin tangible trust assets for gold securities and silver. This is just the beginning. So far, there's only a handful of assets. Nice Plum is actually the third or fourth most traded asset at the moment, and it does not have that much volume.
So this is available now. Thank you for giving us some light on sort of what's motivating you to do that. I think it's really cool and interesting, and I wish you success with it. Where can people go if they want to get Nice Plum, or if they want to hear your music, or just get in touch with you somehow?
If they would like to listen to my released albums, they can go to niceplum.com, which should be fairly self-explanatory. If they want to buy assets, then they should go to counterparty.co to get informed about the Counterparty system. If they already know Counterparty, then they can head over to counterwallet.co. And using that wallet, it takes minutes. You send Bitcoins to the, you put up a buy order and you have them in your wallet. So I'm trying to show people that if you want to crowdfund something, or if you want to do decentralized betting or speculation on assets or creating them or whatever, I mean, there's possibilities that we haven't even thought of yet. And if people want to do this, then Counterparty is the program to use.
And one last question. Where does the name come from? Where did you get Nice Plum?
The ether of reality just sprung spontaneously into my head. I wish it had a story, but I thought it was catchy, appealing, and in retrospect, it fits the music, because my music, even if it's slightly melancholic, the genre, I always try to make something upbeat. I try to make the song in such a way that when I'm done making it, I feel happier than I did before.
Nice Plum, thank you so much. I appreciate your time today.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to episode 122 of Let's Talk Bitcoin. Content for this episode was provided by Stephanie Murphy, The Cypherfunks, Nice Plum, and Adam B. Levine. This episode was edited by Denise Levine and Adam B. Levine. Music for this episode was provided by Jared Rubens, Nice Plum, and The Cypherfunks. Any questions or comments? Head over to the forums at letstalkbitcoin.com and start earning LTB coin today. See you next time.